Good morning. This is Tailinh Agoyo on Rise and Thrive on USALA Media. Today I have a wonderful guest, Ginew Benton, who is Ojibwe, who is a filmmaker from the Hamptons, New York. He grew up on the Shinnecock Nation and graduated from Stony Brook University with an honors in theater and high honors in media arts. Ginew was awarded a 2007 Ford Foundation Film Fellowship for his short film script, Looking Glass. In 2006, he participated in the Fox American Indian Summer Institute at University of California, Los Angeles, directing the short video Cry for Help. He has directed several other shorts, including Monotony, for which educational viewing rights were requested by the Smithsonian Institute, The Hat Tricks, which was screened at annual Urban Visions Festival, Museum of Television, and Radio City in New York City. Ginew is a United Nations Short Film Award recipient. He has since produced the films Crossroads and Looking Glass. Looking Glass is available on Amazon and other streaming services. Ginew has composed songs in albums for championship Native American drum groups, The Boys, and composes for young blood singers. He is also actively involved in traditional Native American culture, where he performs across the country as a grass dancer and a singer-songwriter. Ginew is a mentor and teacher of Native culture. He is also a traditional wampum maker and is well established in the local Native American communities across the East Coast. Welcome. How was that?
That was great. I'd just like to also mention that Looking Glass just won in the past couple months 2 awards. One for kind of, what is it? The best, Looking Glass won 2 awards, which is honorable mention for the AFI World Peace Initiative through the United Nations. And then also best concept at Benton Film Festival, best original concept. So I'm very proud of that and very proud of our team for that. So
that's wonderful.
I just wanted to add that in a little bit.
Yes, thank you. Well, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here today. Your bio is there's a lot, so I want to get into it. First, let's talk about, can you just share a little bit about where you live now? Because I know that you're from a different area. And
so a long time ago, in a land far away, called Wisconsin, and also Minnesota is where I was brought up. Before I moved to Long Island, I came from Minneapolis, Minnesota, St. Paul. We grew up there. My dad is Edward Benton Benet, who recently passed away. He is the Grand Chief, or the former Grand Chief of our spiritual lodge in Wisconsin. And my mother remarried into the Shinnecock tribe, and she married Charles Kellis Smith II, who is a former tribal chairman, taking after his father, Charles I, who was a chairman for like 30 years plus in a row. So that was really, I'm very proud of, my father, my family lineage, and also the family that I was married into on Shinnecock. And I've been here for 32 years now, so about 8 years old. My grandmother would say I moved here when I was 9, but I believe it was 8. I was 8 years old when I moved to Long Island. And through that, I gained a really great relationship with the Shinnecock people, the Unkachug people, the people of Long Island, and also the New York City community. It's the New York City Native community is really diverse, very helpful. Things have been a little, shaky with COVID going on, but every time you go into the city in New York City, I should say, the Native community is very embracing and very helpful, and encouraging to young Native artists and Native artists alike. So,
Yeah, let's talk about your interest in film. When did you begin?
I grew up in the 80s, of course. I'm 40 years old now, and after my parents had separated, it was just me and my mom for a little while. And she was a working girl at that time, doing her thing and hustling and providing for us. So a lot of that time I was being babysat by wonderful people that we lived with. And in that time, I watched a lot of movies. And I think my love for film started with uh, Jim Henson Productions, mainly. I got into, what was it, TV shows like Fraggle Rock, the classics like Thundercats, all those. Um, and then going into Labyrinth, The Dark Crystal,
Oh,
and
yeah.
things that would just kind of blow my mind as a young child on the creation of worlds and the stories that go with them and caring about characters. And getting into horror after that as well. I have to admit that I loved horror. So when we moved to Long Island, when my mom met Charlie, my stepfather, one of the things I would do is I would get into horror movies, and my grandmother would say, "Why are you letting him watch that horrible stuff?" You know, but I would love how the feelings that cinema would give me. You know what I mean? I knew it wasn't real. You know, I was always taught from the very beginning, you know, it's just a movie, right? It's not real. Yeah, of course. But the feelings that I would have, and it would intrigue me and interest me, and I would want to do that one day. And of course, as I got even older, being a Native American, my mother also being a part of the theater communities of St. Paul and Minneapolis, when she came out here to Long Island, she got into the education realm with the Southampton Public Schools. And one of the things that we would do is do gigs, as Native American people do. You know, we present our culture to the schools, and that's kind of my first introduction to theater per se. Even though we were doing what we always do when we go to powwows and ceremonies and things like that.
It wasn't
Um, we
performing.
were taught to perform in front of crowds, you know, and then also um, I had to take a stance in reiterating our teachings and our oral history and the songs and the dances, and I had to learn to sing and things like that so that we could perform those. And that all bled into culminating to the person that I am today, I think. Um, Loving the performing arts and loving theater and film, and my passion for movies to this day. I love them. You know, I think I spend a little bit too much time on the TV because I also love, you know, getting out there and exercising and things like that. But you know, I'm very attracted to stories and to character. So.
Let's talk about your most recent project that you released a trailer for, and
Mhm.
it's currently in the pre-production stage. Is that what you would say? Or
Yes, pre-production stage. Yeah.
okay.
Um, so, um, you know, we have a million ideas floating around as a tight knit crew. My cinematographer, who I met probably about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, at Shinnecock Powwow. There's a man by the name of Ferdell Willis who sings with Youngblood Singers with our group. Um, he had a gentleman with him from who was from Liverpool, and he's a photographer. And our first introduction was quite interesting because he put his camera down on my head roach, and I kind of gave him a, you know, a lashing with my fingers. Hey, why are you doing that? Don't you know any better? All that kind of stuff. You know, the kind of thing that you would do. And he was very sorry and everything, but getting to talk to him, you know, I saw his photography, and it was really great. I loved his lighting. I love his passion for Native American culture as well. You know, I think one of the big advantages of him being from Liverpool, um, and kind of being accepting of Native culture, and be completely willing and open, is that because he is not from this country originally, so he wasn't brought up as an American per se. With
It's a
there's things that he doesn't there's
perspective,
things that he doesn't know. Yeah.
right?
So it allows that friendship to be a little more solid because there wasn't these biases or anything that I felt that most people of color or Native American people feel sometimes in situations. So I asked them to say, I have this script that won a fellowship through Sundance, but I never got the chance to do it. And would you want to do that? So he read Looking Glass, and then we did that. Um, So getting on to the actual topic, Iron Shirt is our latest venture. Um, and he really loved the idea of having a child Native American superhero, because it's something that um, it's kind of a big thing now, and it has been for a decade, the realm of superheroes. Um, and there was a man that came out to visit, and he's been out every year for about 4 years now. I think his name is Eric Lapointe, and he had two wonderful sons with him, Shaj and Tokala. And Shaj and Tokala reminded me a lot of my sons. They're kind of like spitting images of them. You know, they're a lot alike. Um, so in thinking of that idea, Eric and his boys are actually descendants of Crazy Horse. Um, so I asked them, I said, hey, I have this idea and I'm going to be starting the script for it soon. But what I'd like to do is film a pitch trailer, you know, something that would help us sell the idea and kind of get a gist of what we'd like to do, so that if somebody would like to purchase the film or buy the script or something like that, then we'd have some ammunition behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And you, thankfully, were very kind and generous to be able to be a part of that trailer as
Very
well.
excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, and it was. I think the product that we came up with was kind of very on point to the story itself. It is a little short film if you kind of look at the trailer. You know, it does have a beginning, middle, and end. Um, a big portion of the story is left out, but there's a whole sequence of um, story with the child. And Iron Shirt comes from the the shirt wearers of the Lakota people, or the Plains people. Um, the shirt wearers were considered a society of men that were chosen by the people who were warriors in a sense, and that's a big topic of the film. You know, what is a warrior? That is a song that I created for the trailer. Because in modern day, the word warrior is kind of thrown around a lot, and really doesn't have the meaning that it originally should have for Native American people. A warrior is somebody who gives everything of themselves to the community, to the people. It said that the warriors were the poorest people because everything that they acquired, they'd always give it away to the needy, you know. So it's not somebody who would just go and be the toughest or be the baddest or fight anybody or go off to war for no reason. Or, you know, even though our warriors had to kill in our history, you know, that was a concept that was brought by the foreign invaders that came. You know, it's either kill or be killed, so we had to kill people. um, so it's said that these warriors were the best of the best, and they were the quietest in battle. They were able to sneak up on their enemy without um, anybody hearing. They were the strongest because of their will and their pride for their cause. And even some of them were considered to be bulletproof. You know, we have legends of, I think I stated in the trailer, Geronimo and Crazy Horse, people that it said that the foreign invaders would say that bullets would either fly right through them as if they were ghosts, or they would hit them and bounce off and not affect, you know, and they'd still be riding into battle, you know.
Right.
So that's kind of the premise that I thought about in this, because what a perfect way to segue um, something in our oral history that is real and bring it into the future for our children to know that oral history,
Mm-hmm.
to bringing up that topic for a child to be invincible, something that would be worthy of a cause, to teach the lesson of what a warrior should be when it comes to the storyline, the plot, the bigger picture that will be unfolding, um, and depicting that in a setting that we find ourselves today in. You know, when we protest and we fight for clean water, clean air, and the environment and our rights, you know, we're often met with, you know, a harsh backlash that we don't deserve. And so putting a Native American superhero in that setting was a fascinating idea to me, and I wanted to create that in story for representation really of Native American people and children to see themselves on screen doing something for what we believe is right, even though that, you know, we receive backlash for the things that we try to fight for, you know. And so I'm just about, I'm not just about, I'm going into the second and third act of the script. It's up on my screen right now, and I'm coming to the part where I have all the strands and the braid, and I'm getting to that part where I have to interweave them into a place that that fits all of story elements that I want, but making them make sense in an order, you know, to make the complete story. It's a very difficult process, but it's, you know, it's very heartfelt, and when you're motivated, you know, hopefully people will love this.
So people who are listening can see the trailer on, you have it
It's
up on.
on YouTube right now, yeah. We're thinking about filming a couple more things. There's people who saw the trailer so far, and they thought it would be good to see a couple more things with the child superhero in their superhero outfit, which is a you know, a men's traditional dance outfit.
Mhm.
And one of the things I wanted to do with that, there's always this really great feeling that our children have when they look at our powwow outfits or ceremonial things, and they feel like superheroes because they dress up, you know, in all these really beautiful colors. So I wanted to depict this child superhero who wasn't really brought up in his way of life, um, contrasting a city life versus a reservation life, where children are brought up most often than not traditionally with traditional knowledge. Even if they may not practice, they still know things um, because of the lifestyle, the setting. So I think one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to shoot a couple more things showing his abilities in the outfit, because the idea came up when people were watching. Um, uh, what kind of powers does he have? I know we kind of hinted at them, but just seeing those things in his actual outfit, I don't know if I wanted to show anything just yet or reveal. I wanted to show him in his outfit in New York City and
Mhm.
showing that contrast as well, because there's a lot of photographs circulating that I really love, with Cliff Matthias, my cinematographer, Brian, who showed Native people in their traditional outfits in a city setting. And I just kind of wanted to continue that imagery in this film as well, since it is a part of the storyline. Um, so people can see that currently on YouTube. I did submit it to one micro short film segment for Portland International Film Festival, you know, just see what would happen, you know, because it is sort of a short film. I don't know what's going to happen, but if it does get selected miraculously, it'd be a good standing point to be able to pitch the script to people, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful trailer. And I think the story is a full one. It leaves you wanting to know what's happening, you know, especially the part in the,
Hmm.
is it in a river or is it a lake?
Yeah,
It's in a river.
yeah. There was keeping up with current events. You know, we have Standing Rock. We have the events on Shinnecock regarding the billboard and the signs, and you know, the many other things that Native American people go through, just for economic and environmental and even personal human rights. Um, so one of the stories that I saw circulating on social media was upstate in Maine, the Micmac people who are going, who went through and maybe still are. I haven't seen it a lot lately because of COVID and the influx of that media, but they were going through a lot of fishing rights issues, where non-indigenous fishermen were terrorizing them, shooting at them, you know, doing a lot of things that were appalling to do to other human beings. Even myself, you know, have been stopped fishing on native land, you know, native waters, and had my stuff confiscated because of non-indigenous laws, you know. And the big oxymoron to that is that, you know, some things may be protected, but that's because of non-indigenous fishermen, things like that. It's like we have done this forever, and if you just allow us to do it, what people don't really realize is that indigenous rights are human rights.
Mhm.
If that's one of the viewpoints that should change, and that's one of the viewpoints I'd like to put into the script. So it is a waterway. It's an East Coast waterway. Um, One of my good friends, Jay, who works at Stony Brook, he's a professor at Stony Brook. He said, well, what's a Lakota man doing on the East Coast, fishing, lobster or whatever he's fishing? And I said, well, there's a lot of us, we're very intertribal nowadays. We end up, just myself, I'm an Ojibwe from the Great Lakes, and I ended up out here, and I fish the traditional way of the East Coast people. And it just so happens, that I'm putting also one of my storylines into it where he had children from somebody who lives in New York City, and you who play the mother. So he stays out and does his best with the traditional knowledge that he does. He doesn't prefer the city per se, and wants to live off the land and provide for his children and everything. And he's a Lakota man that just happens to be on the East Coast,
And
because of that.
I love those little details because
Mm-hmm.
I we all have so many stories. Our lives are so complex, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that sometimes people who don't understand or our communities don't understand the complexities of traveling and family and kinship, and we're not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what's a Lakota man doing fishing, like, well, what's he doing on the East Coast? Well, let me tell you a story. And so you have all these little details which may or may not be illuminated, but they're there. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
filming in New York City and filming, I mean, even the character I played, it wasn't very, you're not in the trailer anyway, there's not a lot of backstory represented, even though we talked about a backstory. But
Mm-hmm.
just what she's wearing or how she presents herself or how she acts. And, it's just very interesting how you're
Yeah.
putting forth all these different, ways of who we are. Just, it's not one idea that's typically been represented in Hollywood for a very long time.
Right. And it's a very difficult math to have to describe on paper, on black and white when you're writing. Um, I know there's plenty of, very talented people out there, but I I wrote one feature script already. It's just kind of sitting on the shelf here. Um, but Iron Shirt seems to be kind of the closest to my own story. And even though it's difficult, it is easy to find solutions for things because it is part of my story. It is part of modern Native American story. So I feel there is a lot of people who will relate to this,
Yes.
as we are becoming intertribal people who are, traveling off to other tribal lands
Marrying
and
and
you
having
know,
children that are,
yeah. And there's these issues that we always face of the duality of colonialism, the things that Native American people find important, you know, um, and it just happens to be because I'm writing from my perspective that the mom happens to be a city person, and I wanted to write the mother in a way where she's not an evil person. She's just doing what, in her perspective, is the right thing in her dreams and her pursuit of happiness, and how those dualities conflict with the father and what he finds important, and how the kids are kind of caught in the middle of that, and how it becomes an adult situation that is really unnecessary to the raising of the children, you know. That happens traditionally, that happens as um, as a person who lives in an urban environment. um, we all do what we have to do to survive nowadays,
right.
but it becomes it's becoming a story of the purity of childhood and how we lose that as adults living in a colonial setting and our battle with that as indigenous people. our kids just want to be. And the reflection about how they lose out on things, but then how they deal with becoming who they are at the same time, and how those impact them. Those kind of are the deeper plot points that I'm putting into the film, and I hope it resonates that way. Um, and my hope is that I have a really good first draft that somebody will take and rewrite it like 10 times, and hopefully keep that nuance and essence in there, but make it better. And if I get paid to complete it and write those 10 more times, then I'll be happy for that. That'll be a very big goal and accomplishment in the career goals that I have.
Well, you have a lot ahead of you.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a gorgeous film, and you will do all that you want to do with it. So let's talk about all these other, I see you've been doing a lot of Zoom calls, you've been on a lot of panels and discussions with other filmmakers. How has this year been for you in terms of, I know you're home, I mean, you're in your office, you're getting the work done, you're writing, but then in terms of like networking and getting out in the world via Zoom, how has that
been? So Zoom is pretty cool. It is cool to work from home, but one of the things I like to teach as a traditional mentor is that we are spiritual beings living a physical life. And one of the things that are taken away from us as human beings is that physical contact, that physicalness that we all desire in order to have our spirit grow out into the world, So, seeing people singing on social distance powwow sites and things like that, it's really good, and it's good to hear the music, but there's nothing compared to being up front at a powwow or a ceremony. I was at my first sweat lodge last week, and that was really recharging. We were all tested, we're all negative, nobody was sick or anything, so we decided to have a ceremony because we needed it, in our hearts. Going to film festivals, oh man, I miss that. It's one thing, it is very easy to network because you still are seeing people face to face. You can view people's films virtually from home, but to be able to travel, you're missing out on that. To be able to shake hands and meet people face to face, to get that impression. Filmmaking, I know people are a little worried. There's a lot of movies coming out on digital platforms. I miss going to the movies, seeing films on the big screen. Even though it's convenient watching it from home, there's this experience of having your popcorn or whatever, your soda, watching it on the screen. Those things are difficult, and I know that even when we were filming your scene in the city, you came all the way from Philadelphia for that, and we're very grateful. But there was a concern of social distancing and doing things in a way that would be safe for everybody. And I hope we did that well enough. Putting our masks on when we weren't filming, staying way over there, kind of thing. It was a concern, and especially having children on set, those are very valid concerns. And fortunately, nobody has gotten sick. I know that I did have COVID back in last April and May, and I know I had it in May because it was my mom's birthday in May. It was my wife's birthday in May. So I was in the house for a month. It took about a month to test negative, finally. And one of those things that I'm really grateful for is our Native American medicines. There was a lot of people who reached out. Those ceremonial people who made sure that we knew of our traditional medicines that we took. And we were all warned not to put it on social media or put it out there in the open, and that if you know people, just tell them on the slide. what you have to do. Um, and I think because of that, you know, I'm fortunate to be here. You know, there's a brother of mine that kind of teased me. You know, was it that bad, or was it actually the medicines? You know, was COVID not that bad? And I said, I'm sure it probably would have been worse if I wasn't taking our traditional medicines. And I think the biggest symptom that I had was being tired, exhausted.
For a long
Um,
time, right?
yeah, for the whole month, just simple things like washing the dishes, doing the laundry, you know, being quarantined, that was, you know, tough for me. Like I'd be exhausted right away. And, you know, I thank goodness for our traditional medicines and the knowledge that we were able to keep. Um, and that, you know, even as far as work and being around people, you know, especially in Indian country, you know, when people are like, "Oh, you got the Rona," you know, kind of stay over there, kind of thing. You know, we don't know if it's contagious yet, you know. But I did that myself. You know, I said, you know, nobody knows anything about this virus yet completely. So even though I test negative, you know, I don't want to be around. I didn't go around my parents for months, you know, just because I didn't go around elders. I didn't go around anybody. You know,
Yeah,
I tried to stay to myself and do what I had to do to make money, but it was very, very difficult. You know, because it's hard to function and not be around people,
of
you
course.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. But things are pretty back to normal. I think it's safe to say that you know, I don't want to knock on some wood that, you know, I have an immunity, but you know, my wife is an essential worker and we haven't re-caught it. And I uh, wouldn't want to re-catch it. And I think we might be okay if we do it again. But
Tough time.
you know, there are people alive also from my wife going to work,
Right.
and I think their families are very fortunate for that. You know, you know, um, but that's the world that we live in, and I think that probably answers the question of, you know, how it affects the world and my world per se. And I don't know how it's going to affect, you know, selling the script. Productions have slowed down. Productions have stopped. Unless you're like a multi-million-dollar production that can take the necessary precautions.
Mhm.
I heard that one of the really cool things, Tom Cruise, I think, built a $3.3 million facility that's COVID safe so that he can continue filming. You know what I mean? So I am no way, shape, or form able to do that, you know? um, so, you know, I'd love that if it would go somewhere. But the state of the world, you know, I have no idea. You know, I can just wish our team the best of luck. And you know, if it does get sold, I hope that you can come back. I hope the world is safe enough where you feel safe enough to be a part of the team still. You know, um, so yeah,
Yeah, that did actually, when we were in New York, it felt pretty safe. I think just because we were outside and then every time we weren't working, we would put on a mask and just stayed away from other people. But it was very crowded. And I was surprised.
yeah, surprised.
It was the first
Yeah.
time I've been in New York since all of this started. And I was surprised how lively the park was.
hmm Even to this day, if you go into the city, I've been in a couple times. It's really crowded. But what I've noticed is that it's mostly just locals.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's not as crowded
Um,
as it usually is.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's not a lot of tourists, and there's not a lot of people that you would recognize as you know, the yuppies, or you know, I don't want to be mean to people, but there's a lot of down to earth people in the city and just kind of hanging out and being around each other. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. It feels good.
I think it's so yes, they know how to navigate it, right? And they know
Yeah, yeah.
it does.
Uh,
It felt okay because it felt like everybody was respecting boundaries, and even
mm,
if it was busy,
yeah.
no one was in your face, no one was acting ridiculous. People were being it yeah. It's not like stories I've heard about people going to the Midwest and no one even acknowledges COVID exists. It's New
Right.
York knows that it's a real issue, but people are trying to live their lives too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, Other projects. I like the realm of science fiction. I really do. Um, and I love the realm of traditional science fiction. If you can think of native science fiction as, and I think that's really a realm that people aren't really tapping into yet. And that's something that I like to think about. Oftentimes, when you're watching films about Native American people, we're always seeing the past, um, and the past with a colonial perspective, um, taught with a colonial lens. There was a panel I was on recently with Newsday who did an article about um, Long Island natives. And part of that article, I did mention Iron Shirt and things like that. But we were on a meet and greet panel discussion via Zoom. And one of the things that I said that kind of blew people's hair back was, you know, we, it's strange to always have to speak to people in a colonial perspective, and you can't just speak to them in a native perspective because they don't want to hear it or they don't get it. So you're oftentimes have to translate the native perspective in a colonial way just so that people could hear you. And I find that oftentimes difficult even with our cinematographer, but him being so willing, there's always questions that he asks. And he's always like, well, I'm the white guy on set, and if I don't get it, it's not going to reach other people. And oftentimes I say, you do have a point, but just like non-native films don't cater to us, why should we cater to you? You know what I mean? Just say it, you know, have it be a point of discussion where, you know, sometimes maybe you shouldn't get it. Maybe it should be Indian perspective only. And that when the film is made, have non-Indigenous people ask those questions so that we can educate people. You know what I mean?
That's exactly.
Um, so in the realm of science fiction, we're also we are seeing a lot of really great native films, I should say, though. Being part of film festivals, there's a lot of great ideas coming out. Um, but delving into science fiction, Iron Shirt is science fiction, even though it's based off of real oral history. Um, Putting it in the context of, a teenager film where it's not too heavy, but it's heavy enough. The kind of heavy that we grew up on when we were, in our teens or tweens, where movies were a little more heavier in our generation. It kind of dialed back a little bit recently, I saw. Um, but how it is that we take modern tropes like Looking Glass, which is a Native American time travel film. How do you take something that is recognizable, that is a concept that we also carry as Native people, and tell it in a way that makes it completely ours, from our perspective, from our ideologies, from our teaching point, from the things that we understand, and convey that on film, um, that would register as the truth to anybody who watched it. Um, so delving into time travel and what we view with in our ceremonies and our songs and the science behind that, that's one of the things I like to do is throw science in the face of
Yeah.
um, who we are.
Mhm.
You know, for example, one of the panels I had for Asanabka in Canada Film Festival, I was on the radio there, and one of the things that they asked me about the sweat lodge ceremony and how it relates to time travel, and I said, well, in a sense, the sweat lodge ceremony is time travel. Our medicine people knew how to communicate with the past, you know. Um, and if you look at the science behind it, you're taking stones and you're putting energy, heat energy into them, and putting sound into them, um, in a way where you can communicate through space and time. And he kind of looked at me sideways, and I said, well, we have another device that does that, if you can see the phone. I said, it's nothing but minerals that you're putting heat energy into with sound, and you're communicating through space and time. You
Mhm.
know, it's the same basic concept, just in a different housing. You know, our ceremonies are the same thing as these things are, just on a grander scale with a human experience, you know. So taking things like Iron Shirt, where you have this perceived magic, and taking the magic out of it where it is a real concept, where you do have people like Crazy Horse who possess these shirts and were shot with bullets and were bulletproof. You know, they were faster than any soldier, giving all the soldiers the runaround, and bringing that into the future, um, to have a modern day Native American child possess all of those skills to do the right thing. Um, Another story idea is about the star and what that means to us. You know, I built a whole screenplay off of that. Um, so the topic of being able to translate, um, who we are in essence is like this really big task that for some reason I'm motivated to do.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And I think, um, it's very hard work, but I think if you're doing what you love, it's not very difficult at all.
Mhm.
You know, I'm sweating over the screenplay. You
Right,
know what I mean? Like sitting here pacing back and forth.
right.
But it's something I'm really motivated to do because I think the outcome will be something very beautiful, for people to see. And, giving life to that will be very satisfying spiritually, you know, as well. Um, and be able to let go of those stories as well. And I think that's one of the things that writers do, and I find that writers do, or artists even, that art is a translation of your spirit, and you're putting that out into the world, and you're kind of in a sense giving birth to that and pushing it away as therapy, you know, and pushing it aside and allowing other people to interpret that outside of yourself. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You know, so I know I got a little heavy for a second, but
Beautiful. And I'm really excited that you're doing this and that it'll be out in the world.
mm,
I think we're wrapping up. This has been an incredible conversation.
whoa, that went fast.
So quickly. You covered so much and you said so many wonderful things. I'm really excited. If people want to check out your film on Looking Glass, they check out Looking Glass on
Mhm.
Amazon,
YouTube.
Hulu,
Oh,
YouTube.
Looking Glass. Yeah.
Looking Glass.
Yeah. Looking Glass is on Amazon. Nicolas Cage has a movie after I finished mine called Looking Glass. So
Oh,
if you, um, search my name, Ginew Benton, Ginew space Benton, Looking Glass, 2 words. Looking Glass will show up.
yeah.
And then also with Iron Shirt, if people want to view the trailer on YouTube, um, Ginew Benton Iron Shirt. If you bring up Iron Shirt, it'll literally have videos about ironing shirts, you know. So
Yeah.
it's kind of funny.
Hard to find before, so it's not hard to find. So definitely look for that and look forward to many other great, many other great, why can't I say a sentence? A lot of great work coming from the new Benton.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time today, and um, thank you everybody for listening. This is Tailinh Agoyo on Rise and Thrive on USALA Media. We'll see you next week. Bye. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.